skeletal muscles show a negative feedback system. What is it, and why is it important in skeletal muscle? First of all, let us recall the meaning of a negative feedback control. As you would recall, a negative feedback control is when the response is opposite to the stimulus that has caused it. Here, in case of skeletal muscle, the muscle is going to be subjected to stretching. The stretching is going to cause an elongation of the muscle. Now, this elongation of the muscle is going to provoke the contraction of the muscle itself, that is the myotatic reflex. So when the contraction happens, this muscle is going to shorten. I'm going to go over it again. Stretching will cause the muscle to elongate. The elongation of the muscle is going to cause its contraction, which leads to its shortening. So the response, which is the shortening of the muscle, as you would observe, this is the response, is opposite to the stimulus, that is the stretching, which has caused it. So here, as you would observe, the muscle is showing a negative feedback control, where the response, that is the contraction, the shortening, is opposite to the stimulus, that is the elongation due to stretching. Now, the next question is, why do skeletal muscle need a negative feedback system? Why is the negative feedback system important in skeletal muscle? Now, the skeletal muscle has two systems of feedback control. One, which is concerning its length with the neuromuscular spindle, which we have discussed, and the other is concerning its tension with the Golgi tendon organ. Both of them are going to play a role in protecting the muscle against excessive elongation and tension. So therefore, the importance of the negative feedback system in the skeletal muscle is protecting the muscle itself against excessive elongation and tension, which would lead to damaging the muscle fibers. As you know, the Golgi tendon organ are found in the tendon of the muscle, and as we have proved in the previous session, they are sensitive to stretching and to contraction. Now, the Golgi tendon circuit is a negative feedback system. Its role is to regulate the muscle tension. How does it regulate the muscle tension? Actually, it is going to decrease the activation of the muscle when large forces are generated, and this is going to prevent the muscle from remaining under the high effect of tension, and by this way it is going to protect the muscle integrity. That is, it is going to protect it from damaging, because muscles would lose their integrity when the movements are powerful, and this is going to result in the muscle damage. Finally, we come to our last point in the session today, which is the control of the reflex action by the superior nerve centers. Remember that at the beginning of our session, the title called our attention which was reflex control, that is, the reflex can be controlled, and we asked ourselves, how can the reflex be controlled? So this part is going to give you an answer to the question. The superior nerve center, which is the brain, can control the reflex action. That is, a myotatic reflex can be disturbed, or it can be inhibited or stopped voluntarily by the brain. Now, how does this happen? This is something we're going to discover as we go ahead. Now, the first point here is that we're going to verify by experiment that the superior nerve center can modulate and inhibit the myotatic reflex, thus controlling it. In order to prove this notion, an experiment was done using the triceps theory. Remember that the triceps theory is the extensor muscle of the foot. The electrical activity of the triceps theory was recorded during an Achillean reflex in 3 different situations. The first situation is during a normal Achillean reflex, where the tibialis anterior, which is the flexor muscle, is non-contracted. Remember, as we have explained previously, in a normal Achillean reflex, the triceps theory, the extensor, is going to contract since it is receiving excitatory message through the alpha motor fiber, and it is going to contract under its effect. However, its antagonist, which is the flexor muscle called tibialis anterior, is going to be relaxed. It is not going to contract at all, since it is not going to receive any nervous message via the alpha motor fiber innervating it due to the inhibitory synapse. Now here, during the normal Achillean reflex, the electric activity of the TS was recorded, where the trace is yellow in color in document E. Document E is showing you the electromyogram of the TS during the 3 conditions. First of all, you will observe that we have 3 colors. This is the yellow trace here. Then you have a violet trace, the second one. And then you have the blue trace, which is like this. If the following, or if the adjacent document is not that clear, you can refer to document E, page 211 of your book. Now, the second trace, which was the violet trace, was recorded in a case where the tibialis anterior, that is the flexor muscle, is slightly contracted voluntarily. The person is going to contract it voluntarily before they perform the Achillean reflex, before hitting the Achillean tendon. The third trace, which is the blue one, is when the tibialis anterior is highly contracted. So as you would observe here in the following 3 examples, the variable is the state of the flexor muscle, the tibialis anterior. Here the state, it was in a relaxed state. Here it was slightly contracted, and here it was highly contracted. And when the TA, the tibialis anterior, that is the flexor, is going to contract, it is going to be done voluntarily. Now, as observed in document A, in the case of the normal Achillean reflex, when the TA was not contracted, the TS showed the greater amplitude of response. Here, the TA was not contracted. The TS is showing a very high amplitude of response, which is about 7 millivolt. Now, however, when the TA was slightly contracted, what they observed, as you would see here, when it was slightly contracted, what they observed was that the TS showed a lower amplitude of response, which was around 3. Now, when the TA is highly contracted voluntarily, what they observed was the trace here, the blue trace, which showed that the TS recorded no response at all. Thus, in a normal Achillean reflex, TA, the flexor muscle, is relaxed. It was observed that the TS showed a very high amplitude of response, which is shown by the yellow trace. Now, in contrast, when the TA was slightly contracted, what appeared was the violet trace, which is showing the electric activity of the extensor muscle, that is the TS, with a lower amplitude. The blue trace is showing you here the recording when the TA is highly contracted. So the TA in case of the TS, in case where the TA is highly contracted, the TS is showing no response at all. This is going to indicate that the amplitude of response of the TS is going to diminish or is reduced with the elevation of tension in the contracted TA muscle. That is, the more contraction of the TA muscle, the less the electric activity of the extensor muscle, which is the tricep theory. And as we know that the contraction of the TA in the following two cases is done voluntarily, that is by the intervention of the brain, this is going to tell you that the superior nerve center, which is the brain here, has modulated and has inhibited the reflex action when it had intervened by the voluntary contraction of the TA. Therefore, it is controlling the myotatic reflex.